The morning was supposed to be full of excitement as Chris Stapleton made an appearance on the Today Show to promote his latest album. Fans were eager to hear him discuss his new music and his journey in the country music scene. However, what unfolded during the live interview was far from what anyone had expected. As Chris sat down with the hosts, the mood quickly shifted, and what started as a friendly chat soon escalated into an unexpected clash that shocked viewers across the country. The interview began smoothly, with the hosts expressing admiration for Chris's talent and success. They praised his latest album, noting that it had topped the charts and garnered widespread acclaim. Chris, as always, appeared humble, thanking the hosts and sharing his excitement about the new music. But the conversation took a turn when the hosts began asking about his personal life, specifically his family and how they influenced his music. While Chris has always been open about his experiences, he seemed hesitant to go into too much detail. The situation began to escalate when one of the hosts asked a more pointed question about Chris's relationship with his wife, Morgan, and how she contributed to his songwriting. While Chris's wife is often a source of inspiration for his music, he appeared uncomfortable with the question. He politely deflected the inquiry, stating that his family was a private matter. But the hosts pressed on, asking if Morgan had ever influenced specific songs or moments in his career, and Chris's discomfort grew more visible. As the hosts continued to press on about his personal life, Chris's body language became more closed off. He crossed his arms and gave short, one-word answers, clearly signaling that he didn't want to discuss his private matters further. At this point, the atmosphere in the studio began to feel tense. The hosts, likely unaware of how uncomfortable Chris had become, continued to ask similar questions, which only deepened his frustration. The viewers at home could sense that something wasn't quite right. After a brief pause, Chris spoke up, telling the hosts that while he appreciated their interest in his life, there were some topics he preferred not to discuss. He made it clear that he wanted to focus on his music and the work he had put into his latest album. The hosts, perhaps trying to salvage the situation, apologized and assured him they would shift the conversation back to his career. However, the damage had already been done, and the tension in the studio was palpable. Despite the host's attempt to steer the conversation back to music, Chris's frustration continued to grow. He seemed increasingly agitated as the questions veered back toward his personal life. At one point, a host mentioned the past comment Chris made about balancing fame and family life, and they asked him to elaborate. Chris, clearly done with the line of questioning, took a deep breath and calmly stated, "I'm here to talk about my music, not my family life." The moment marked the turning point in the interview. Chris's tone was firm, and it was clear he was no longer willing to entertain the questions about his personal life. The hosts, likely sensing the shift in Chris's mood, tried to backtrack, offering vague apologies and mentioning how they admired his music. However, Chris wasn't swayed. He remained silent for a few seconds, looking directly at the hosts with a serious expression. Finally, Chris made a decision that stunned everyone in the studio. He stood up, adjusting his jacket, and politely excused himself from the interview. "I think I'll call it a day," he said calmly, before walking off the stage. The hosts were left in shock, unable to immediately respond to the unexpected departure. The audience, both in the studio and at home, was left speechless. What had started as a promotional appearance had turned into an unscripted, tense moment of television. Backstage, Chris's team quickly stepped in, speaking with producers and ensuring that he was escorted out of the building. The production crew scrambled to regain control of the situation, and the show quickly cut to a commercial break. Meanwhile, the hosts sat in stunned silence, their faces betraying their confusion and regret. The mood in the studio was somber, and the once light-hearted morning segment had abruptly shifted into a moment of discomfort. After the commercial break, the hosts returned to the air, acknowledging the situation without going into specifics. They briefly apologized for pushing Chris too far and expressed hope that the interview could be rescheduled in the future. However, the damage was done, and social media erupted with reactions from fans, media outlets, and industry professionals. Many expressed shock at Chris's walk-off, while others took to Twitter to voice their support for his decision to set boundaries. As the story spread, Many speculated about what had triggered Chris's walk-off. Some fans pointed out that Chris had always been a private person, especially when it came to his family. He had often kept his personal life separate from his public persona, preferring to let his music speak for itself. For others, the incident was a reminder of the intense pressure celebrities face in interviews, where the lines between personal and professional can blur in an instant. The fallout from the incident also sparked discussions about the ethics of celebrity interviews. Many questioned whether talk show hosts should be allowed to push guests into uncomfortable territory, especially when it involves sensitive personal matters. Some pointed out that Chris had made it clear he wanted to focus on his music, yet the hosts continued to pry into his personal life. This raised important questions about respecting the boundaries of public figures and understanding when to stop asking certain questions. As the days passed, Chris released a brief statement through his publicist, explaining his decision to walk off the show. He acknowledged that while he appreciated the host's enthusiasm and support for his music, there were some boundaries that needed to be respected. The statement reaffirmed his desire to keep his family life private and emphasized that his focus was on the art he creates. The response was measured and calm, reflecting the same demeanor Chris had shown during the interview. Fans of Chris quickly rallied around him, expressing their admiration for his decision to stand up for his privacy. Many applauded him for maintaining his integrity and not allowing the interview to derail into uncomfortable territory. Social media exploded with messages of support, with fans urging others to respect the personal lives of artists and not push them into situations where they felt forced to share more than they were comfortable with. On the other hand, there was also a vocal group of people who criticized Chris for walking off the show. Some felt that it was unprofessional to leave the interview mid-conversation, while others believed that Chris should have handled the situation differently. However, these critics were in the minority, as the majority of people seemed to understand his decision and sympathized with his desire to maintain control over his narrative. In the aftermath of the incident, there were calls for more thoughtful and respectful interviewing in the entertainment industry. Journalists and talk show hosts took to social media to express their support for Chris's decision to walk off and emphasize the importance of respecting a celebrity's personal boundaries. The incident served as a reminder that, while celebrities are public figures, they are still entitled to privacy and the right to control what they share with the world. Behind the scenes, Chris's team worked quickly to manage the fallout from the walk-off. They issued statements to the press, clarifying that Chris was not angry or upset with the hosts, but rather with the direction the interview had taken. They explained that Chris had simply felt that his privacy was being invaded and had chosen to leave the interview before it became a more uncomfortable situation. The team also confirmed that Chris was open to returning to the Today Show under the right conditions. As for the Today Show, the incident sparked internal discussions about how to approach celebrity interviews in the future. Some of the show's producers reached out to Chris's team to express their apologies for pushing him too far. They acknowledged that they should have been more mindful of his boundaries and assured the public that they were taking steps to ensure similar situations would not happen again. In a statement, the producers expressed hope that Chris would return to the show when the time was right. Despite the tension, the incident was not the end of Chris's media presence. In the following weeks, he made appearances on other talk shows, where he spoke openly about his music, his creative process, and his passion for the art. These interviews were noticeably more focused on his career, and he appeared more relaxed and at ease. Fans appreciated that these discussions were centered on what mattered most to Chris, his music. Meanwhile, the Today Show continued to air, but the walk-off incident loomed large in the public consciousness. The show's producers worked hard to regain the trust of both the viewers and the guests who might now be hesitant to appear on the program. Although the incident was ultimately framed as an isolated moment, it highlighted the delicate balance talk show hosts must strike between probing for interesting content and respecting the boundaries of their guests. As the media cycle moved on, the conversation surrounding Chris's walk-off slowly faded, but the lessons learned from the event lingered. Many in the entertainment industry began rethinking the way they approach celebrity interviews, with an emphasis on respecting the personal space of guests. The incident also underscored the need for hosts to read the room and recognize when a topic has crossed the line. In a later interview, Chris reflected on the experience, explaining that he had no ill will toward the hosts of the Today Show but that the situation had made him more aware of the importance of setting boundaries in his career. He admitted that he had been caught off guard by the direction the conversation had taken but expressed gratitude for the support he had received from fans and colleagues alike. His response demonstrated a level of maturity and grace that endeared him further to his fans. As time went on, the walk-off became a moment in Chris's career that, while uncomfortable at the time, ultimately became a catalyst for personal growth. The incident reinforced his commitment to privacy and his ability to stand up for himself when necessary. It also reinforced the importance of being true to oneself, both on and off the stage. Chris had faced a challenge, but he had emerged from it stronger and more confident in his boundaries. Fans continued to express their admiration for Chris's decision, with many sharing stories of how they had also learned to set boundaries in their own lives. Chris's walk-off had inspired people to stand up for their own well-being, and the support for him only grew. His stance on privacy became a key part of his public persona, and it resonated deeply with those who saw his decision as an act of self-care and personal integrity. In the months that followed, Chris's music continued to chart successfully, and he performed at various high-profile events, often receiving standing ovations. His walk-off incident became a footnote in his career, a reminder of the pressures that come with fame, and how important it is to prioritize mental and emotional health. As Chris moved forward, he did so with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. The media, meanwhile, began shifting the narrative around celebrity privacy. The Chris Stapleton walk-off had sparked important conversations about how stars are treated in interviews. Talk shows and other media outlets were more cautious about asking invasive questions and focused more on what their guests were willing to share. It was a subtle, but significant, shift in how celebrities were respected during public appearances. Chris's experience continued to serve as a powerful example for other artists navigating the public eye. Many began to speak out about the need for interviewers to be more aware of the pressure they place on their guests. Some shared their own stories of feeling uncomfortable or disrespected in interviews, encouraging others to be more assertive in protecting their personal boundaries. In the end, Chris's walk-off became one of those rare moments that reshaped the public conversation about celebrity culture. It was an important lesson about consent, privacy, and self-respect. The event might have started as an awkward confrontation, but it ended up sparking a broader cultural shift toward more empathetic and respectful media interactions. For Chris, the journey continued with more hits, more performances, and more personal growth. He used his platform to continue advocating for artists and the importance of mental health in the industry. His walk-off was a reminder to fans and the public alike that even the biggest stars deserve space to protect their privacy. And so, the story of Chris Stapleton walking off the Today Show after a heated clash would go down in television history as a moment that not only shocked viewers but also changed the way we think about privacy, respect, and the power of boundaries. It was a story of standing firm, staying true to oneself, and remembering that sometimes the bravest thing an artist can do is walk away. As the year went on, Chris Stapleton's walk-off became more than just a moment of personal defiance. It became an example of how artists, despite their fame, are entitled to dictate the terms of their engagement with the media. His decision to leave the Today Show highlighted the growing need for respect in celebrity interviews, and his fans rallied behind the notion that no amount of public interest should outweigh an individual's right to privacy. In the wake of the incident, there was also a growing conversation about how talk show hosts should better prepare for interviews with celebrities, especially those with a reputation for privacy. Hosts of shows like The Ellen DeGeneres Show and The Late Show with Stephen Colbert began reevaluating the types of personal questions they asked their guests. The Chris Stapleton walk-off was a turning point, with many in the media industry calling for more thoughtful preparation and a better understanding of boundaries. Chris's ability to assert his boundaries in such a public setting earned him respect from not only his fans but also his fellow musicians. Many artists expressed their admiration for his bravery in taking a stand for personal space. The incident sparked a broader conversation among artists about the pressure to share personal stories for the sake of entertainment and how that sometimes conflicts with the need for privacy. Behind the scenes, Chris's team worked to ensure that the incident didn't define his career. In the following months, they released statements focusing on Chris's love for his fans and his passion for his music. They were careful to frame the walk-off as a moment of self-respect rather than confrontation, emphasizing that Chris was not angry with the Today Show but had simply chosen to take control of his own narrative. In interviews following the walk-off, Chris would often reflect on how the experience had helped him learn to balance his career with his personal well-being. He noted that while fame came with its own set of challenges, learning to set boundaries had made him a better artist and a more grounded person. His candidness about the walk-off made him relatable to fans who were also navigating their own boundaries in their personal lives. As Chris's music continued to dominate the charts, the walk-off became part of his legacy, but it was never the defining moment of his career. Fans continued to embrace his down-to-earth personality, and his commitment to authenticity only deepened their admiration for him. He remained consistent in his message, that his music would always come first, but it was equally important to protect his mental health and personal life. The walk-off also had a significant impact on the Today Show itself. Producers made it clear in internal discussions that they would rethink their approach to celebrity interviews moving forward. There was a renewed emphasis on respecting the boundaries of all guests, with the focus on preparing guests for potentially sensitive topics. The network recognized that the incident had provided valuable lessons on how to navigate the complex dynamics of celebrity interviews. In response to the fallout, the Today Show issued a public apology to Chris, acknowledging that they had pushed too hard in their questioning. The apology was heartfelt, with the show's producers stating that they had misread the situation and that they would work to ensure that future interviews were conducted with greater care. Chris, in turn, accepted the apology, though he remained firm in his stance that his privacy was non-negotiable. Fans of Chris took to social media to share their thoughts on the situation. The hashtag #RespectChrisStapleton quickly gained traction, with supporters expressing their admiration for his courage in walking off the set. For many, the incident became a rallying cry for greater respect for privacy, with fans sharing personal stories of setting their own boundaries in their relationships and work environments. The incident was also covered extensively by news outlets, with experts offering analysis on the growing trend of celebrities asserting their boundaries in the media. Some experts argued that Chris's walk-off was indicative of a broader shift in how celebrities engage with the public. As more stars chose to protect their personal lives, the entertainment industry began to see a shift in how it approached its relationship with the media. The conversation around celebrity privacy and boundaries also became a major topic in academic circles. Media scholars began to examine the dynamics of celebrity culture and how the line between public and private had become increasingly blurred. Chris's walk-off was used as a case study in discussions about the ethical responsibilities of talk show hosts and journalists when interviewing public figures. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Chris spoke about how the experience had affected him emotionally. He acknowledged that while he was proud of his decision to walk off the set, the aftermath had been overwhelming. The intense scrutiny and public discussion about the incident had taken its toll, but Chris remained resolute in his belief that he had made the right choice for himself and his family. Over time, Chris's walk-off became a less central part of his narrative, though it remained a noteworthy moment in his career. As he continued to release new music and perform, he focused on his craft, letting his work speak for itself. His music became even more personal, as if his decision to walk away from the media spotlight had given him a clearer sense of purpose. Years after the incident, Chris was asked in an interview about the walk-off and whether he would have handled the situation differently. He smiled and said, "I wouldn't change a thing. Sometimes you've got to stand up for yourself, and sometimes that means walking away." His response was measured, reflecting the growth he had experienced since the incident. It was a reminder that, in the end, It wasn't about the clash but about the lesson learned from it. Chris Stapleton's legacy was not defined by the walk-off, but rather by the authenticity of his music and his ability to stay true to himself in an industry that often tries to dictate terms. His decision to walk off the Today Show was a powerful statement, one that resonated deeply with his fans and peers alike. It served as a reminder that celebrities, like everyone else, deserve respect and the ability to control their own narrative.